Good evening, and welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Kevin Booker Jr., and I'll be your host. Tonight, we're going to have a fantastic panel, and I am really excited about the three of them being here, because tonight we are going to really dig deep into exploring the world and broadening your perspective, especially when it comes to traveling. And when I think about traveling, I always say to myself, geez, I love going different places, but the three individuals you see right here on this panel, they really travel the world. And we're gonna dig a little bit deep tonight on some of these conversations on how they became experts. Because to me, they are definitely experts. And I learned a lot from the three of them, and I hope that you are willing and open to learn as well. So what I would like from the panelists, I would love for the three of you to introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, and maybe something that you really want to share, something important about yourself and how you got to the point where you are today. Okay. All right. Starting with you, Kat.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Kat Goulart. I am 39 years old and I live in New London, Connecticut. I actually retired at a pretty early age. I had a bail bond business that was scattered across the country. We had all different offices. And so I initially started traveling for work purposes. And the more I saw, the more I wanted to see. And so I've been self-employed since I've been 23 years old. And I will be self-employed until the day that I die because I need the time to travel. I love to volunteer. I love to give of myself. And, really traveling allows me to do a lot of that. And so thank you, really, for thinking of me to be on this panel tonight.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kat.
I'm Abdul Rahman Ibn Muhammad. I also go by the name of Dream Chaser number 1. So
can you say that again, please?
Dream Chaser number 1. And so basically, traveling is a part of dream chasing. I want to see the world, see how different cultures, different people, and so I'm sure there's all these great questions, so we'll get to that later. That's a tough one.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Thompson. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut, originally from Minnesota, so part of my traveling brought me out here. I'm a principal up in Hartford, and I started as a teacher, and the joke is always that teachers are teachers because of 3 reasons, June, July, and August, which would lead to the opportunities to travel. I don't think that's actually true, but that does lend to a lot of opportunities to be able to spend extended time away from home, which is great. And thank you, too, for having me on the panel, Kevin.
Thank you very much. So when I think of the three of you, what comes to my mind, because a lot of people, they always say, well, I don't want to be on a plane. I can't fly. It's too much. I'm afraid of heights. Getting on the train, I see trains always crashing and getting accidents. And, I feel comfortable just being in my neighborhood and my community. When I look at the three of you, who inspired you to travel? When did you have that turning point, or was it always in you? So, starting with Abdul.
Well, I used to always travel around the United States. My family is from Mississippi, so we would drive from Connecticut or New York to Mississippi. You stop in all the different places. But the thing that really made me want to travel the world is I had kidney failure. And so I had kidney failure for like 2.5 years.
Wow.
And when I had kidney failure, my brothers, they went to Brazil. And I couldn't go to Brazil because of my kidneys and all that kind of stuff. So when they went, I was like, you know what? One day, if I ever get a kidney, I'm gonna go see the world. Wow. Now the funny thing is, I've still never been to Brazil, but I've been all over a lot of other places. But that's really what inspired me to travel. I mean, for somebody in my family, all three of my brothers went to Brazil at the same time, and so it was kind of like I missed out on something. And so since then, I've probably traveled as much as all three of them put together 10 times. So it's just, it inspired me to say, there's a lot more out there in the world to see.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And Kat Goulart?
My parents were who inspired me to travel. And the reason for that is because they never went anywhere. They still don't go anywhere. They are very, very happy to stay at home and see what we have here. And they grew up very traditionally, and they live where their parents lived, and their parents lived where their parents lived. And we didn't go anywhere as a kid. We didn't have much money. Even if we did, we probably still wouldn't have gone anywhere. My parents are comfortable now and still don't travel. And we took one trip when I I was 8 years old because one of my brothers won a coloring contest at the grocery store. And so we got a free trip to Disney World in Florida. And when I saw, really, I know it sounds ridiculous, but when I saw how exciting it could be to be away from home and the bustle in the airport and, even just the ride, we got up in the middle of the night and we're driving somewhere fun. And I was hooked, and I have had wanderlust ever since.
That's awesome. And Lindsay?
What inspired me to travel? So the first time I was ever on a plane was when I was in high school with our choir trip, and that we traveled to Great Britain and traveled around singing at different venues. And I think that opportunity took me completely out of my comfort zone. I was very far away from home. It's probably the first time I was ever away from my parents that long. And it was okay. I survived the plane ride. I got back, and then after that experience, we, as friends, really talked about it a lot. But then I started talking with my grandparents, but I hadn't known. My mom's mother and father had traveled quite a bit because they just never talked about it a lot with the grandchildren. And so I just got to learn a lot more from them and what had inspired them to travel around, really mostly United States. But I think that trip just kind of, I guess, pulled the Band-Aid off in a way that, one, traveling without my parents, but being on the plane for the first time, being that far away, everything worked out really well. So it was, why not continue to keep pursuing different things? And then just talking with other people, hearing about great trips that they took or places that they went, even if it was just in my own state where I lived. I always wanted to check it out or learn something new and see what they were talking about. So.
Now, there are a lot of interesting places to travel. And I look at the three of you, and I'm always on Facebook and social media, and I see you all traveling and going different places. What is the most interesting place you have ever traveled to? And why? Any one of you.
Well,
Go ahead.
Are you sure? Okay. Mine's a domestic one. Mine is and it's a tiny little town. You have to really zoom in on Google Maps to find it. It's Mineola, Texas. A couple years ago, I went on a work trip and I was staying in Dallas, and we had some free time, and so I just hit the road and just went for a drive. It's one of my favorite things to do, whether I'm home or whether I'm somewhere new, is just to go for a drive and kind of surrender to the experience and find what you find. And so I landed in Mineola. And it is this, of course it's Texas, so it's a little two-bit town, and it's got the crossroads in the middle. And they did an amazing job of preserving history. They had the hitches for the horses still in the road, and the old posts to hook everything up to. They had antique stores, and it was this beautiful blend of really old buildings and then modern architecture. And it really inspired me because I'm on my city's Economic Development Commission, and we're kind of struggling now developmentally in New London with how we can move forward. And I had this light bulb moment that, wait a minute, we're not embracing our history and sort of going full circle in a tourism sort of way, in the way that we should be. And I saw it happening so beautifully in this one town that easily, hands down, is my favorite place because it inspired me.
Thank you.
Yeah, the what was the exact question you said?
Dream chaser number one.
No, I know who I am.
Describe the most interesting place you have ever traveled.
Interesting. So I would say, I've been trying to get all 7 of the wonders of the world.
Wow.
So I
now,
got,
when you say all 7, just for our audience out there who's actually listening,
yes.
What are the 7 wonders of the world?
So the 4 that I've been to are Machu Picchu. That's the most interesting place I've ever been. Just we'll start with that. Chichen Itza, that's in Mexico. Colosseum in Rome, the Taj Mahal, and Christ the Redeemer in Brazil. That's why I haven't seen that still. That's 5. There's 2 more I've seen. What are the other 2? They'll come to my mind. There's 2 more though. There's 2 more. And I actually been to them too.
Wow.
Yeah, I just can't remember right now. But there's 2 more. But Machu Picchu is, I think, for me, it was the best place I've been because to get there, so we went to Peru and we were in like the city, and then the next day we went to where Machu Picchu is. So we had to take a plane from the capital to Machu Picchu. Wow. And then when you get to the place, you have to take you take a train. So we stayed the night at this beautiful hotel, and then you take a train from this hotel to like right below the mountain, and
Jeez.
then you have to take a bus to the top of the mountain. And so some people actually hiked to the top of the mountain, but it was a long ride in a bus. And so we get to the top of the mountain, and it's like, it's a whole community at the top of this mountain.
Wow.
And so the thing about Machu Picchu that's interesting is that, you know, when the Europeans came into Peru, they would have never found the what is it, the Mayans or the Aztec, one of the Indian tribes. They would have never found them because you couldn't see on top of this mountain. They were so high up. And so the only reason they found them, the only reason why that culture ended was because one of the Indians had gone out to get some food or go get something, and they came back and they had gotten sick. And so they killed everybody. And so the only time they found that culture when they had planes to go over it. So like basically it was unknown until a plane went over it and they said, "Oh snap! Look at that on top of that mountain right there." So that and so it's a place
That's
when you're up
fascinating.
there and you look out and you just like kind of say like, it's amazing. It was just amazing. The view, the way that it looks, the fact that there are like llamas up there and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, you know, so pretty awesome place.
That's fascinating.
Now I got to write down the 7 wonders.
I know. And Lindsay?
One interesting trip that I took was after Hurricane Katrina had hit New Orleans, and so it wasn't a vacation trip, but it was one that we had taken with service in mind of being able to help, not even rebuild, but help clean up after the hurricane had gone through. And I would say it was most interesting because in all of my traveling, there's been some sort of element of really getting to know the community. I think that's really important, and not just being a tourist. And I don't like to stand out as a tourist. That's probably like an insecurity that I try to avoid, so I get to know the other things that are happening. But just getting to know the families and talking with families when you were coming to their homes, which they didn't live in anymore. But for them to describe like what actually happened, how their family was safe, and then to get to the home and try to break everything down to get to a place that they could rebuild. It was really humbling because I think as I was fairly young at the time, so any little disaster seemed like the end of your world. But to see like how positive and hopeful families still were when they literally had nothing, like their entire home was going to get stripped down to its studs and rebuilt, and the amount of money they would have had to invest in that in order for that to happen, and then just the ton of time that kids lost in schools. And that community's lost, was just really, it was heartbreaking, but helpful for me, I think, to learn at that young age this resiliency and hope and get to see it firsthand. And it was fun. I mean, we lived in like an abandoned hotel, and it was really gross and like no running water, and so it was an experience that we were really pushed to maybe outside my comfort zone, but then living with other people who are tired and you're working all day. Was a transformative experience for me, to say the least. We were only down there for 6 days, so there were a lot more people, obviously, families that are still affected by it. But that I would say is most interesting, just in the things that really changed my perspective.
When I think about traveling, I think about growth, and many of us, grow based off of different places that we travel to. And one of the questions that comes to my mind is, how have you developed as a person? And as a result of your traveling experiences, and how has it improved your leadership and interpersonal skills? Because many of you that are sitting here are in leadership positions, and throughout the community, and your community, throughout the state. But how has your traveling like really broadened your horizons and also improved your skills when it comes to working with different people from various backgrounds? Starting with you, Kat.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, I used to actually be a very quiet, shy person, well into my early 20s. I was the person that was happy to, play on my phone or stick my nose in the book and not ever speak to anyone. And I also, something you should know, I get a little bit of anxiety riding middle seat. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm kind of a big kid, so I don't like to ride in the middle. And so there was this one particular trip I was on pretty early on in my career. I got stuck in the middle of the seat. And there was no amount of whining or trying to, coerce my way into an upgrade or, flashing anything that was going to do any good. And so middle seat it was. And so I got stuck between two of the most amazing people I have ever met. Wow. And I didn't want to have a conversation. The only reason I did is because for as not small as I am, they were very large. I had a big old farm boy on one side of me and a guy from Hawaii on the other side of me, and I had all my arms folded in, and I felt like I was 5 years old. They were gigantic, and the only thing we could do was just make jokes about it. That's like, right. Hey, 3 big kids together, what are you gonna do? And we are still friends to this day. Wow. We still maintain
awesome.
We maintain communication on Facebook, and I realized in that moment that sometimes if you just pay attention to who's around you, that you might not actually miss something. You could have some good experiences. And so I started speaking to more strangers, and in a safe way, and, and doing more things. And then all of a sudden, I was running for office and running my own company, and I'm involved with this amazing community outreach group, and we do some really, really good work. And my life is completely different now, and it may not have been if I didn't get stuck in that stupid middle seat. So for me, it really, travel has transformed me, and it's taught me to, step outside my comfort zone. And I don't know if I've strayed too far from the question. Did I kind of get it?
No, it's great.
Okay.
No, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much, Kat,
Of course,
for that.
thank you.
Yeah, Abdul, if you'd like to shed light on that a little bit more.
I think that one of the things that I take away from traveling is like leadership, in the sense of you get more respect for people and the lives that they have to they live. I think that when you live in America, you kind of take for granted basically everything. You say, running water, I'm gonna go get something to eat. All these things are like right at your fingertip. And so I think, when you travel out into the world, I remember one time we went to I do a trip with a bunch of guys, and so we all went to Dominican Republic, and we're going ATVing. We always go ATVing. So we're ATVing, and they pull up on this little village, and right before we are going ATVing, they always try to get you to get some cookies or whatever. And so we pull up on this village, and all these people, these little kids are running up, and they want these cookies. And so what you realize though is that every day they bring a group by this little group of kids for these cookies. So they had candy, they had cookies, but the kids really wanted the cookies. And so it was one of the saddest days, because you imagine like all these guys, and you see them, like the kids are like fighting for the cookies. And you see some of the kids in the distance, they don't have on clothes, and it was just like really impactful. So for me, it just taught me it teaches me like respect and how lucky we are to be in America, and the things we take for granted, drinking the water and turn on the water, anything like that. It's not like that for everybody. Wow. And so I think that, from a leadership standpoint, it makes you say like, I feel like it's my responsibility to remember them, because my business is all about service as well. So the people we serve as well, they're not in a third world country, but sometimes their situation is not as good as some of other people. So it just keeps you on your toes and reminds you that you can't take your life for granted, and you gotta also respect the lives that other people have out in the world. And I think that's important, because sometimes we become, I don't know if it's an ungrateful American, but it's like we just assume, we're gonna be accepted everywhere we go. And I think that when you see different people's situations, it just kind of humbles you a little bit. So.
Wow, well said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
For me, I think it was a 9-year-old that taught me this. So that first trip that I took out of the country, we stayed in homestays, and you're grouped with other students or other peers with you, and you would stay with families, which is a little nerve-wracking anyways. You're staying with a family you don't know. They just have been deemed safe and friendly for you to stay with. But I remember there was one family when we were in England. I don't remember the city. Parents were both professors, and their 9-year-old would listen to history on tape at night all the time, like very, very smart kid. and probably because he was listening to history. I'm just joking. But smart in the sense of he was like incredibly perceptive. So he's part of, we're teenagers and we're just talking. He's listening to everything, even though we don't think he's paying attention. And one of the other girls in my group kept saying like, "Oh, that's weird. That's weird," to everything that was just a little bit different. And it just kept going and going. But for us, I mean, it was a word you say all the time as a teenager. So it wasn't, I don't know, I didn't catch on to it. But as a 9-year-old, he said, "Weird. Is that what you mean, like something's different?" And it was really convicting. I think at that point, she was really embarrassed because realizing like weird is not necessarily the same as different. It's different, and then something's not quite right about it, or I'm uncomfortable with it being different. And for the rest of the trip, that was probably, I think, maybe our like third or fourth day there. I didn't hear her say it that much, and now we're a little more tuned into that word. But it was convicting in the sense of we were seeing everything being different from where we were because it wasn't the same. Soda didn't look the same, or they had Coca-Cola, but it did not taste the same, and that was weird. McDonald's was weird, and we were trying to fit these things in all the different cities we went to fit back into this mold that we had in the United States. And him saying that started to make me think a little bit more. Obviously, as a teenager, you don't learn that lesson completely, but it stuck with me throughout the time. So even traveling in the United States or outside of the States, of seeing the perspective of the things are different, there's a reason it is, but then on the leadership part of like asking why or trying to learn more. And so wanting to learn more about customs or traditions that maybe appear like in your mind, you may say, "Oh, that's weird," but really that's different. But does that spur you to understand and to learn more? Because it can not only just enrich what your experience is, but you may choose now to change the way you do something because it makes more sense, or you can connect to a meaning or a purpose that you learned outside of your own kind of tradition or comfort. And so anywhere I've gone, whether, again, in the United States or outside, there's always things that are different. And so choosing to engage in it. So I think of that in the work that I do. As a teacher, I taught high school math, and so teenagers are always weird, right? Which just means they're different. They think and they perceive about the world very differently. And that's because we've all had different experiences, and as adults, we're supposed to know more. We believe we do. But if I would engage in a conversation with the student and try to understand more and pose it in that way. One, they're more confident because they know their story better than I do, but they can teach me a lot more. And that's the same way I try to position myself with my staff that I work with now too, is just to understand more. The way they do something is different or not the way that I would give the advice to do, but I've learned a lot more from them and from the kids I work with by just asking more questions and perceiving it as different, tell me more, versus that's weird, I don't want to know any more about that.
Thank you for sharing that. In America, we're very fascinated with race, class, sexism. And when you look at our society now, especially with the administration that's in office now, we see a lot of focus on race, class, and sexism, and words are just, flying everywhere on different things, when it comes to that history, that legacy that we've had in our nation. And when I think about, the baggage that we carry sometimes as an American citizen when we go to other places, and I think about your travels and how you all have traveled. But many people have a different perception of what an American is. When I travel, they always say, I thought all Americans were white with blue eyes and blonde hair. And so when I look at you and you're all different and different shades and and you have a lot to bring to the table. And Abdul said something earlier. He said, respect the lives that other people have. And and accept it, so you can understand that wherever you go, you have to respect other people and their cultures and their customs. Have you ever been treated differently based off of your race, your class, and your gender when you have been to another country? Because the reason why I'm asking that question, when I went to Puerto Rico, and I was in Puerto Rico for 2 months, that was the first time I didn't feel like a black man. Race was not really something I had to think about right away when I walked in a room. So as I sit here now and I look at the three of you who are leaders and who I respect, has that ever had to cross, because many of you have traveled, you have a wide range of traveling experience. Has that ever crossed your mind? Did you ever even have to deal with any of those concepts or ideas when you had to travel? Abdul.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always aware of, I'm always aware that I'm black. Mm-hmm. I'm always aware that, when you go to different places, I think that, like, you get treated differently because a lot of times the people that you're interacting with are, like, in service of you. Yeah. So, like, they know that you're, that's American. You start talking. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to work for that tip, right. Different things like that. And so I think that, but I'll tell you, one time I was in Dominican Republic. Another time we went to a cockfight, right? Oh, wow. And so we're at the cockfight, and this is like culturally, this is what they're doing. But it was like one of very few times I was scared because we were at the fight, and all the attention was on us.
Oh wow!
Because we were out in the community, and it was to the point where like the guy that we were there with was like, it's time for us to go because it was too much. Like we were at a place, it's like a casino in a sense, right? But instead of it being playing board games, table games, it's chickens fighting each other. And but it's like the people were drinking, it's the same kind of atmosphere in a sense. And so people were very aware that we kind of were tourists. And it wasn't a place where they had to be nice. It wasn't a place where they weren't pandering to us.
Right.
And so it was like we were in their environment. It was the thing that was interesting. One of the guys from the resort had invited us to go there. And at the resort, he had on like a bow tie, bow tie book, right? Yeah. And he's all like put together. And at this place, he had like his eyes were crazy. It was like because he was so fired up about the fight.
Right.
And so, we made the decision to leave, and I just felt like it was a one time where I just felt like being American, we were sticking out like a sore thumb. And I like the idea of blending in and being a part of as opposed to being like, there they go, right over there, let's go rob those guys. And so that's how I felt. And I mean, right. And even the driver was like, it's time to go.
Wow. So just to piggyback off of that, and that feeling that you had, that anxiety at that moment.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for people who say now they hear your story and they go, okay, now I don't want to go to Dominican Republic?
No, they should go to DR. I mean, just a few months ago, right? Like right. People were saying you don't go to DR. People were dying and all that stuff. I went to DR like 3 weeks ago. I mean, right. So I like DR. But I mean, it's kind of like one of those things where I don't think you should cut yourself off to the world, but I think you have to be aware of your surroundings.
Right.
If you go to certain places, maybe like when we were in DR this time, we all said, okay, we're gonna stay on the resort because we're not sure. I don't drink or anything like that, anyways. Right. But I just feel like certain times you have to be smart. I mean, oftentimes we've gone on trips. A lot of times when I travel, I always travel with my wife. Or I travel with a larger group of people. And so I'm responsible for the people that I invited to come. I'm responsible for my wife, right, in a sense. And so we don't want to put ourselves in danger. So we try to do we do some exploring because it's no fun to just say, I went to this place and I was on the resort the whole time. I know. That's not really going anywhere. You could go to a resort here in America. Right. But I think that being like aware of where your surroundings. And so, like, every place you go isn't necessarily like they want you there,
right?
And I like that actually because like at that fight and other places I've been, there's a certain pride that the people have, and so it's like I said, they're not pandering, they're doing what they do,
right?
And you're a visitor, and so and sometimes when you're at certain places where maybe you shouldn't be for longer than 30 minutes, they might rob you. Not to say people will rob you in DR, but I'm just saying everybody in the group was looking like it's time to go. So I'm just saying that was one situation that it was time to go.
Kat, would you like to share one of your experiences?
Yes. And I love what Abdul said about paying attention to where you are.
Where you are.
Because there's been places even here in the United States that you gotta
Right.
keep your head on a swivel and look out, and they know that you're not from there.
That's right.
Because you're looking around like, where am I at? Where's my Uber? Where's my,
Right.
and really, so that could happen anywhere. It can happen in Europe.
true.
It can happen in South America, but it could happen, right down the street here.
Absolutely.
It really could be anywhere. And and if we're talking travel tips, that's going to be my big one is just
Yeah.
pay attention where you're at. As far as whether I've faced prejudice places,
Yeah.
that I love that question, and we are really at a unique time here
Absolutely.
in the States. I am, and you're talking about shades too. My shade changes season to
Right.
season. I'm Brazilian Portuguese on my dad's side, and
Oh,
my
wow.
mom is all the Eastern European. So
Have you
and-
been to Brazil? Like Abdul?
no, and I have a story with that. I'll tell you why. Can I tell my story?
Yeah.
I grew up with a fear of going to Brazil
Wow.
because my great uncle was president of Brazil in the 60s. And he was ousted by coup, so it wasn't not a good time to have the last name Goulart in
Right.
Brazil then. And so my father had me convinced that if I ever went to Brazil, they were going to throw me in debtor's prison for back taxes and all kinds of other stuff. Well, it turns out that's not really how the world works. And, they've had other governments have been overthrown
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff. And that is on my to-go list because it's a beautiful country. I have relatives I've never met there. So,
Right.
I'm excited to go.
Awesome.
So that's my little digression. But but my, so I because my father is a little darker, my mom's a little lighter, and very much so, I look different times of the year. It's summertime now, so I'm very dark now. In the wintertime, I'll look very different. And years ago, I went to Mexico, and it was dead of winter, because when else, when you live in Connecticut, you go to the warm places in the
It's true.
wintertime.
I know.
And I liked to wander then as much as I do now, so we wandered out of the resort, and we're, walking down the street like big dumb idiots and not paying attention. And I did not have my head on that swivel, and one of us had a purse go missing. And I don't think it had
Wow.
anything to do with anything other than we looked different. You could look at us, and we're all wearing our sneakers, and we all had backpacks and cameras around our neck,
You
and
look like tourists.
we looked like tourists.
I know.
and a little bit the skin color too, because
Yeah.
we're all a little bit lighter
Right.
than native people of Mexico typically have
Right.
a little bit darker skin, and so we kind of stuck out. And I wouldn't say that it was prejudice per se.
Right.
It was really a crime of opportunity. Hey, those girls aren't paying attention. Let's go swipe something from them.
Right.
But I would say in general, I think people of the world are kind.
Right.
We are all really, truly the same. We all want to be nice to each other because we want people to be nice to us.
That's right.
We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. And so I think by and large, the overwhelming majority of people will be nice to other people regardless of what we look like.
Right.
And jerks are jerks in any country.
That's
It
right.
doesn't matter what their skin tone is. I think we're pretty good at spotting them. So just avoid the jerks when you travel.
That's right. Thank you for sharing that one.
Of course.
And don't go to a cockfight.
Don't go to a cockfight.
Just don't stay very long.
Lindsay, is there anything you would like to share?
Not anything to the degree, but I remember I was in France. I don't even remember the reason necessarily, but when America started calling them America fries instead of freedom fries instead of
yeah.
French
Oh,
fries.
wow, yeah.
I don't even honestly remember like what the reason was.
yeah.
But I remember, people before I left, they talked about how the French don't like Americans and all these really negative stereotypes. And I didn't find that to be true at all in traveling. And the only one time we were treated different was I'd been studying abroad. And so it was our last evening in Paris. And at that point, our French was getting pretty good, but we were nowhere near fluent, and I'm sure it sounded that way. And the waiter, it was towards the end of the night, so I just don't think he wanted to kind of negotiate all of that, and you're in Paris, so everyone speaks English and French too. And I just remember he just outright refused to speak French to us. I mean, we still tried, and we felt really offended, But I think in retrospect, it was as it was, just like here, I can go down to Chili's or, the next restaurant, and that same experience can be had. Not necessarily you're
Sure.
interacting in different language, but they're maybe not as friendly in service. Has nothing to do with being French. But yeah, I haven't had that experience. But I also have been traveling out of the country. I've traveled predominantly to European or predominantly white countries. So it's not. I guess I haven't sensed that same experience where maybe it would be a little bit different.
Right.
And I think traditionally, it's coming from being a woman as well. Traditionally, those roles are very similar to maybe how those roles are perceived in the United States. So I haven't felt treated different in that way, I guess.
Based off of the experiences of just going to like European countries?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
So when I think about your stories, the three of you share stories of international traveling. And I know some of the audience, members who are probably the viewers listening right now, they're probably saying to themselves, well, I can't really afford it right now. I got my bills, I got my children, the school's coming back.
Yep.
I got to afford that, and I got my mortgage I got to pay. I got, my car note, and I got, loans, student loans. I have a lot of bills. And as I sit here, I hear this from friends, colleagues, family members all the time. So what tips or resources would you have for people when it comes to traveling so it's inexpensive? And would you recommend that they travel in a large group or a small group, or or individually, when they're traveling? For some people who've never traveled internationally, and maybe some people just traveled domestically. So, because I know some of those listeners right now are probably sitting there going, yeah, it's hard. It's really tough for me financially right now. That sounds great. I would love to go to Machu Picchu. I would love to go right now, stay on a resort. I would love to go to France, but I just cannot afford it. My passport, that's $200. That's a lot of money for me right now. What tips would you have for those individuals? Anyone?
Well, do your research, right? So over the 4th, I went to DC, and I didn't really want to spend a lot of money, and it was kind of an impromptu trip too. So it wasn't like an opportunity to have been saving, money over time. And so I think use your resources. Like, one, it's in your phone. You can Google anything, and there's so many websites out there. Some are good, some are not. Some are somewhat helpful, some are incredibly helpful. But just researching inexpensive things to do in different cities, or unique things to do, or free things to do in the different cities. I didn't know, but they have a free bus in DC, which was, is helpful if you're wanting to get from one side to the other, and it's really hot. And you want to do it free. So I think just doing your research ahead of time and spending that time doing that, because kind of with anything, if you're able to plan ahead more, you're probably going to spend less in the end if that was one of your goals, because you're doing the research. And then that also looks at your budget too. So I think being realistic about what you want to spend or invest, because if you don't plan that ahead, you're going to spend way more than what you intended to anyways. But then planning ahead. So if you want to go on a cruise or you want to go on a larger vacation, trying to figure out how much it's going to cost, but then, save for it. If you're someone that needs to save for it for 2 years, do that for 2 years, and maybe take a little trip in between so you don't feel like you're having to wait for such a long time. I think that's helpful. Also, if you're really out to be adventurous, Google has a flight website too, so you can just search, like, even if it's the dates and how long you're going to go and about how much you want to spend on flights, they'll show you a map of the United States and the world, and you can find out where's the cheapest ticket price, or if you're willing to spend a little bit more, and this is the region of the world you like to travel to, or this is a region of the United States, you might just go somewhere that you wouldn't have anticipated. Maybe you go to Cincinnati or Cleveland, and that wasn't on your top 5 list, but then you do the research too about interesting things to do within your city, and then you find out a lot more about it. But I think for myself, in doing that, just even within the United States, I've learned a lot more history that we're not, you're not taught all of the history of the United States and the history of people here, but through that traveling, you're able to learn a lot more. So I think those sites are helpful. And then use your friends or coworkers, ask them where they go, how do they get their tickets. Frequent flyer miles on credit cards can be helpful, but I think you really need to do your research to find out what's best, and fees and things like that, you can find something that works well. But that's some advice that I would give.
Thank you for sharing that. And Abdul, I know you travel in large groups, and you have these big adventurous trips that you take to DR, and I know you got a couple other ideas the next couple of years. Yeah. Is it affordable? Is it something that people can do if they book, if they maybe travel in large groups?
This is what I think. This is what I think about anybody that wants to travel.
Right.
I think that most people that say they can't travel because it's too expensive, they're lying. Because most people go out to lunch every day. most people buy shoes and get new purses and go buy suits, and so it's priorities, right? It's like, what do I really want to do? And I mean, people that they like to go to the club and they buy a bottle and all that kind of stuff, right? So I just think that if people want to do something, they have to not do some other stuff. So the money, I don't know if money is the thing. I think it comes down to, like you were saying before, if you grow up in a family or in a community where people don't travel, you see it, but you don't necessarily see yourself doing it. And so I think until they can experience it and see themselves doing it, I think that they won't do it. And I think that once they experience it, then I think it changes for them. Because, my family, like I said, we used to all just travel basically Connecticut or New York to Mississippi. And then we would see everything in between there. But once my brothers went to Brazil, it kind of, for me, it opened up like saying like, yo, that's crazy. They went to Brazil. Like, that's like my brother met his wife in Brazil.
Wow.
And so it's kind of like one of those things where I believe that sometimes you need a friend or somebody, like if you know somebody in your group that's doing something, it makes you say like, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And so that's what I thought. My brothers went, and I'm like the oldest, so I'm kind of like, these kids went. And so now I feel like and I think the trips that we do, like last year we went to Colombia,
right.
And and so like this year we're going to Costa Rica, and so some of the guys that went on the trip had never been out of the country. So by going on a trip, what it does is you're gonna be with a group, you're gonna be with people that have traveled before, and I think another great thing to do is go on a cruise. Because a cruise, you're like on the boat, and then you go to this country, and you're there for a few hours or whatever, or a day, and then you can go to the next country, so you can see multiple things on a cruise as well. So, but it's really just prioritizing your money. If you really want to do something, you just got to go ahead and save and do it.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to share? Kat?
Both of those.
Yeah.
Definitely, surf the web and find those deals and give yourself enough time to do it. And for sure, priorities. I think people think that I have a lot of money because I travel a lot. I don't have a lot of money.
Right.
But what I don't do is I don't go out drinking all the time. I wear the same clothes that I've had until, they get a hole in them or something. I buy things when I need them, not always when I want them. Because what I love is I love the travel. I like the experiences more than I like the things. For me, I don't love to travel in big groups. I find that when I'm with the big groups, I end up spending a lot more money because everybody wants to go out to the big dinner and then go drinking and go dancing. And also, I like those intimate, smaller experiences that you get sometimes with 2 or 3 people. But also, too, I would say, I guess if I wanted to catchphrase it, don't be afraid of riding in the middle seat. So it may not be your perfect ticket. You might have to fly out of a little bit further airport. You might have a connection or maybe even 2 connections in order to keep the flight affordable. You might do an Airbnb or a different line hotel than you normally do. But don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone and do those things because you might have a really awesome experience. And maybe it's a pain in the behind and don't do it next time. But maybe you really, really like it.
Absolutely.
And as far as like a straight up travel tip, brand loyalty for me, I have found is sometimes, you might spend an extra, $10, $15 on that hotel room to stay with Hilton versus Marriott, and I'm not endorsing one over the other. But if you consistently stay with one airline, consistently stay with one hotel that you use, you will build up points much, much more quickly that you can redeem for free things than if you're spreading it around for whoever's cheapest. And sometimes it is about that exact bottom line, and that $20 is gonna put gas in the rental car for the few days while you're there. But really be judicious with where you spend your money as well, because those loyalty points, to get a free hotel room, that's a big deal, especially if you're running on that shoestring like I am a lot of times.
I think ask the people there, right? So the teenagers or college students that are working at the hotel, they know where to go to get something good to eat. That's like fairly affordable too. They know what neighborhoods you're going to find, what you're interested in. And, I mean, they're tasked to do that too, right? They're supposed to be serving in that way, but also they're most likely from that community, whether or not they've been there for a long time or not. I think those things are important, and just asking around, asking people who who are working at the places versus the people who are also tourists around you. They're maybe not going to know. But I think another thing, I don't know if you're going to ask this question, but just really knowing, like what Kat said, do you like to travel in large groups of people or do you not? Because there's lots of packages and different things. I had friends that just went to Europe, and they decided, because she was a huge planner, but it was stressing her out to plan all these little details and parts of the trip. So she started looking for a group travel group that would essentially do the same types of things. So that stress of all the detail things were kind of out, but they still had the room during the days to explore other components that they wanted to see or other things they wanted to see. But that was helpful for them to find that, and then they enjoyed that time with the other people. But other people don't like to travel with large groups, and when you're in a big group of people and you have to do kind of what the group does, that can be really challenging, especially if you're more of an independent person who likes to have done that research ahead of time and has other things they want to do.
I just want to play devil's advocate for a minute, because you mentioned that, maybe you should speak to someone, who works at the hotel, because they're from the community. But let's say I'm back in DR. Okay, I'm gonna use the example.
You might get bad advice, dangerous
And when I'm
advice.
back in the DR, and I go to the hotel, and I'm at the hotel, and I'm feeling good, I'm feeling comfortable, but I want to explore, because I watched this show, and now I feel comfortable to explore. So I speak to one of those, individuals that work there, and I say, hey, can you show me exactly, where's a good place to eat around here? And they say, yeah, I want to connect you to my buddy, and my buddy's going to take you to the cockfight. So, how do you avoid, that anxiety that we have? Because that's still there too as well, right? And if you are in a dangerous situation because something can happen, and I'm not saying that people should avoid asking questions or anything like that, but what are some other tips you can help, people navigate through those situations? Because those situations are occurring when people are traveling. So,
and that can happen anywhere.
And that could happen anywhere. But what are some other tips that maybe, because if they are alone and they're not traveling in groups, and maybe they are by themselves and they feel adventurous that day, what are some tips that you would give that person? Because many of us have been in that situation before.
I'm sorry. Go
No, I
ahead.
was going to agree with you in saying that you got to keep your head on the swivel. You got to be smart. I mean, it's really like, I feel like everybody has a sixth sense, and so it's like we wanted to go to the cockfight, but it's just once we got there, we just said, I don't feel safe right now. And so the minute I don't feel safe, I'm like telling the rest of the people, we got to go. I don't know, you guys might feel safe, but I don't feel safe, so we're leaving. And so I think that oftentimes, it's just being aware of your environment. Sometimes trust me, I've been in many places where we're literally in the community with the people, and the people are great. And I feel like that's some of the best experience. A lot of times I'll see people post pictures on Instagram, and they'll be like, chilling in Mexico, and it's like a close-up of them. Like, you can't see Mexico. There's no Mexico. It's like, it could be like this room right here. Like, we could be chilling in Mexico right now. And so it's like,
goodness.
I feel like, sometimes the trip is like you want to see something new, something different, and we went to Costa Rica one time, and then we went to like a hike to the waterfall, and it's a beautiful waterfall. Like, that's the picture you want to take, not the one in your villa, right. And it's like a wall, and so it's like, so I just feel like there should be an interest in really experiencing the culture and the people and stuff, but I think that you always, and even if it's not like somebody's gonna attack you, they might steal your purse. Sure. It's a real headache to have to get a new purse, get a new passport, get a new wallet, all that thing. And so that's what you're really trying to avoid. I mean, I know that, like you said, every day in America, things happen.
Every day.
And I think that that's the other piece to remember is that things happen here a lot more than some of these other countries.
Absolutely.
It's like major news when it's happening over there, because typically the countries want us to come to them, especially like the Caribbean and all those different places, because we make their economy. And so it's like they're not trying to hurt anybody, because if you make it where people don't feel safe to come, then that kills everything that you're trying to work
Absolutely.
on. So I think mostly, 90% of everybody is good.
Right.
It's like 10% where you need to kind of like just be aware. And I think that's true in Connecticut, as well as everywhere else in the world. Yeah.
That's well said.
Yeah.
And Kat said something earlier. She said, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. And when I think about that, I think about, all of you. And what's the next place you see yourself traveling to and why? The next place that you really see yourself going, by the end of 2019, a place that you really, really want to go.
I'm going to Italy, and if I have it my way, I'm going to Kenya.
And why is that?
Well, Italy, my wife wants to go to. I got to go to Rome for the Colosseum, right?
I knew it was
And
coming.
He was over here cheating.
My wife wants to go see Venice, Italy, because
Oh, wow.
it's apparently in a few, maybe 10, 20 years, it might be gone because
That's
it's
true.
sinking, into the water. And then I saw this on Instagram. I saw this place called Giraffe Manor in Nairobi, Kenya. And so it's like you basically take a picture with some giraffes, and I thought it was cool, so I would like to go.
That's cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Brazil for me is really where I want to go, and I would love to do that as soon as possible. There's really a lot going on down there, and we've got a lot going on here, and it is a place I have always wanted to go. I have I have fourth or fifth distant cousin that I talk to all the time. He speaks no English, and I speak very little Portuguese because I was a bad granddaughter and did not let my grandmother teach me. But I want to meet him, and I want to meet this family that I've never met and see all the things I've never seen, and see one of the 7 wonders of the world that is.
That's
I want to see things not through my TV, not on my phone. I want to see it with my eyes
That's right.
and remember.
Awesome.
So that's where I want to go.
Thank you.
I'd like to go. I haven't been to any of the islands in the Caribbean, so I think that's where, like, before the end of the year, maybe as it gets towards the end of the year and it's colder, to be able to go down there. Hurricane season's done, but that's somewhere that I'd like to go.
Go to DR. Awesome.
Yeah, I heard DR is really nice.
Maybe part of that large
Check out
group.
the cockfights
Use
there.
Yelp.
So, as we close out, because we're coming to the closing of this, this panel discussion, and I'm looking at the 3 of you right now, and I know you are avid travelers. That's your passion, that's your desire. So when I think about the next 5 years, because each one of you have your goals, where are some places that you definitely want to travel in the next 5 years, and also if you can leave the listeners with something that you live by as well, like something that's deep-seated within your heart that you continue to push forward. Like when you said earlier, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Just something that keeps you moving forward when you travel somewhere new, because it is very difficult for people stepping out of their comfort zone, stepping into something new. So either one of you can take on that.
My top 5. I don't think I have a good top 5 yet, but I have family that's potentially moving out to Oregon, so that's one thing I want to go the next 5 years. I've never been to the West Coast, so California is on my list as well. I'd love to go to Toronto, Canada, Puerto Rico, and I'm just at my 4 right now, so I have to think about what my 5th one is. But I think the one thing that I would leave you with is just that lesson that I just continue to remember from that 9-year-old of it's not weird, it's different, and that should engage you in more of the conversation to understand and to hopefully change your own perspective, or maybe even change the way you do something.
Awesome.
So
Thank
the
you.
next 5, I will go. So let me give you those 7 wonders of the world.
I knew it was coming back.
Machu Picchu in Peru. I've been there. Chichen Itza in Mexico. I've been there. I haven't been to the Colosseum in Rome. I haven't been to Christ the Redeemer in Brazil. I haven't been to the Taj Mahal in India. I've been to the Great Wall of China. I will tell people the best pizza I've ever had in my life was in China.
In China.
It was in China. If you eat Chinese food for 7 days straight,
Yeah.
anything tastes better. But we went to Pizza Hut, and I'm telling you, Pizza Hut in China. And the last place is Petra in Jordan, and that's if you go to Petra in Jordan,
Yeah.
do not go to the monastery. You see the treasury, go back. Just remember I said that. That's a travel hit tip. And then my advice, of course, is never stop dreaming. You gotta chase your dreams. You gotta live the life of your dreams. And so go travel somewhere, get it off your dream list, and then figure out where the next place you're gonna go, because you only get this one life, and you might as well eat it up. So that's my advice. Never stop dreaming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kat?
Well, my top five, or my big five, is actually inspired by a series of love letters that I found. This is, I love this story. When my grandmother passed, you go through and you clean everybody's house out, and she had this shoebox full of love letters from when my grandfather was off to war in World War II over in Europe. And in all the letters, he would say where he was and what he was doing, and they were, bring you to tears, beautiful. And so when I read this, I sort of had made this snap decision in my mind of, I want to go to all these places. I want to, not maybe find the exact fence post that my grandfather sat against and, to see goats out in the field, but, to kind of relive that experience, I thought would be really, really awesome and a nice tribute to them. So I want to go to, maybe places I've been before, but the cities that are on there. And there were some cities in France and Germany and I almost said Europe, England and Italy and Portugal, because he's from there. And it was something that I've always wanted to do. And so my next 10 years, while I'm still young enough to, be able to move around and do these things, that's what I would like to do. And what was the second part of the question there? I forgot. Oh, the advice.
Yeah.
So my big advice is to surrender to the experience.
Can you say that one more time, please?
Surrender to the experience. I like to joke around, I call it the Goulart curse. I am forever stubbing my toe and dropping things, and gee, wouldn't it be terrible if this thing happened, or this, I haven't broken a nail in a while and then my nail breaks. You can't control what happens. The universe will serve you what it serves you. And so if you get stuck in the middle seat, or you get grounded on, because of a thunderstorm in an airport somewhere, enjoy the experience and step out of your comfort zone. Talk to the stranger next to you. Smile at the child that is screaming its head off and driving you crazy because maybe they just need someone to be nice. So really just surrender to that experience. Enjoy where you're at, and I think in general, you'll have great travel experiences and a pretty good life.
Awesome. I just want to say I thank the three of you for dedicating your time. I have a lot of respect for the three of you, and you have inspired me tonight to want to continue stepping out of my comfort zone and continue traveling as well. And I also want to say thank you to my mom as well, because my mother inspired me to do this particular discussion. Because I remember when I was younger, when I was like 8 years old, my mom used to say, okay, Kevin, and K-Ron, that's my brother, and she would say, we don't have a lot of money, but let's get in the car and we're gonna just drive to New York. And we would go to New York and we wouldn't have any money or anything, but we would just walk around. And she would say, you have to look around and enjoy it, because you see, life is a lot different. Not everyone lives the same way. And those experiences and that exposure helped me to appreciate people and help me to appreciate different communities as well. So when I sit here and I stand here today and I think about all the experiences that you have all shared, I just want to say thank you for empowering and encouraging the audience and the viewers and the listeners today. And I think about M.K. Asante Jr., and he always says, for the listeners there, when you make an observation, you have an obligation. When you make an observation, you have an obligation. Today, you have observed different techniques and strategies on how to travel. And some of these incredible individuals have shared with you how you can do it. But remember, as many of them said, as Kat Goulart said, surrender to the experience. As Dream Chaser #1 said there, continue chasing your dreams. And remember that 9-year-old, most importantly, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Thank you so much for this experience. Thank you for listening this evening. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate all of you. And remember, explore the world and broaden your perspective. My name is Kevin Booker Jr., and I appreciate you taking time to listen. Thank you.